Hey guys, it's James with Appalachian DIY. Today we're going to be doing a timing belt on a 94 4Runner with a 3.0 liter. There's going to be a few special tools that you'll need for this. Mostly it's just normal hand tools, but I'll show you the few kind of specialty things that you'll need. Alright, so we're going to start with this cam pulley holder here. This isn't an absolute must for this job, but it will potentially make it easier. So if you have a chance to get one of these, pick that up. An impact with an air compressor. Once again, this isn't absolutely necessary because you could use a breaker bar instead. And this is going to be one of these two things is what we're going to use to take off the harmonic balancer. And speaking of the harmonic balancer, the other thing that you will absolutely need is some sort of puller to pull the harmonic balancer. Alright, first thing we're going to do is remove the radiator hose. Alright, next we need to remove the water outlet where the radiator hose connected to. Now you can give this thing a little tap and remove it. Alright, now we'll remove these studs. The ends of these studs are actually in inverted Torx, and the size is E5. Okay, the next step will be to remove the fan shroud, which is the plastic thing here that covers the fan. This one doesn't have one, but if yours does have a fan shroud, then you're going to be looking at a few bolts here on the side of the radiator. Probably here and down here, and then the same on the other side. So once you kind of unbolt the shroud, you just kind of get it loose, then we'll proceed to unbolting the fan. So now we'll take a wrench and go ahead and loosen the nuts here on the fan. Once those are loose, you can go ahead and spin off all the nuts. And just kind of walk it off there. Get it out of the way. Now this has also loosened up your power steering belt and pulley, so we can go ahead and take that off now. Alright, the next step is to remove your AC belt. So there's the AC compressor right here. The tensioner pulley is this one. Loosen that nut on the pulley, and then we'll unscrew the long bolt in the back of the pulley to loosen the tension on the AC belt. Alright, we're underneath the car now. This is the nut that I told you to loosen up on the AC compressor pulley. So we've just loosened that up, and here's the actual tensioner bolt. So go ahead and loosen this up and just keep turning this until the belt is loose enough to come off. Okay, the next step is going to be to remove the alternator belt. So it's going to be a little bit different. We actually have a bolt here on the bottom, and then a bolt right here. Okay, next we'll go ahead and remove the upper timing cover. You can just kind of move these spark plug wires out of the way, and you're going to find bolts all along the cover here. They're all going to be 10 millimeter. So We got 4 here on the top. We have a couple recessed in these holes right here. Got one down here, and probably some hidden here on the side. So let's go ahead and remove all those 10mm bolts. Okay, next we need to remove this bracket right here, or at least get it out of the way. So there's going to be 3 bolts here. 1, 2, and 3. And then there's a 4th one that we'll need to loosen up, and it is right down here. It's kind of hard to see, but it's right here on the back of this power steering pump bracket. So we'll need to at least loosen this up, take all the other 3 out, and then we should be able to get this thing out of the way. And if you can't do it that way, then just go ahead and pull that bolt out as well and just pull the whole thing off.
You're hungry, James.
Ultimately, it's easier just to take out all the bolts. We get this bracket out of the way. So just go ahead and do that. Okay, before we remove anything else, we need to go ahead and get our timing marks lined up. So there's a few different marks here that we're going to look at, and these are already painted white. But if yours aren't painted, you're just looking for a little indentation here, a line basically, on both the cam gears. So here's the mark right here on the left cam, or this is the right cam rather. So we want to line this mark up with a little indentation here on the back timing cover. This one's already painted white as well, but it's just a little indentation. So we'll line this mark up on the cam gear with this mark here on the back timing cover. We'll go over here to the other cam, do the same thing. We've got the timing mark right here. We're going to line it up with this indentation here on the back cover. And then we'll go down to crankshaft pulley. There's a little indentation here as well, this mark on the crankshaft pulley. We want to line that up with the 0 here on the piece, this plastic piece of the timing cover. So we've got a 19mm socket on the crankshaft pulley, and we're just going to rotate the crankshaft over until the mark lines up with 0. Alright, so there you can see we have the little white mark here on the pulley. It's lined up with 0. Let's go back up and look at our cam pulleys. We have this mark lined up with that mark, and then we have this mark lined up with that mark. So we've got the timing marks lined up. This is a good opportunity to go ahead and inspect the condition of the timing belt tensioner, the belt, water pump, pulleys, and things like that. I'm just going to go ahead and push on the belt right here. You see we have tension right now, which is a good thing. You shouldn't really be able to push this belt. So let's do this and we'll check the condition of the tensioner. Alright, so you see that? You shouldn't be able to do that. So now I've just pushed the belt with my fingers, barely, and it's moved the tensioner. You shouldn't be able to move the tensioner with your fingers. So now the belt's all loose and flopping around. So we know for sure that the tensioner is bad. it's a good idea to replace these when you do the timing belt anyway, but if you're trying to save some money, then you can opt to not do that, assuming that the tensioner is better than what I just showed you. So if you can push down on this belt and it doesn't move, then the tensioner is probably okay for now. But like I said, if you're only going to do two things when you do the timing belt, you should do the belt and the tensioner. The water pump, which is right down there, we'll inspect the water pump a little bit closer once we get there, but look for signs of leaking there. If it's leaking, so go ahead and replace it when you're doing the timing belt, and then you'll have a crankshaft seal behind the crank pulley here. The next thing we're going to do is remove the pulley here, the outer pulley on the crankshaft. You want to use like a pretty hard jerking force to break these bolts loose so that it doesn't turn the crank pulley too much. I can use a screwdriver or a pry bar to pry this pulley away. Alright, next we need to remove this crankshaft bolt right here, and if we're lucky we'll be able to use the an impact to get this off. If we're not, then we'll have to use a different method. So let's try this first. Alright, that obviously did not work, so next step is we're going to use this big pry bar right here with a 19mm socket on it. We're going to put the pry bar here on the crankshaft, and this is very important where the pry bar sits, because we're going to use the starter motor to turn the engine and use the pry bar against the frame to break that bolt loose. So I have the pry bar face down there towards the ground. So what's going to happen is whenever we hit the starter, it's going to come up and it's going to hit the frame right there and hopefully break this bolt loose. Alright, so once you have your pry bar in place, go ahead and have someone bump the engine over. Alright, go ahead. Okay, and check it, see if the bolt's loose. Go ahead. Go ahead. Alright, that looks like it broke it, so we'll check it real quick. Alright, so we can see the bolt's loose, and go ahead and take it out the rest of the way. Alright, the next step would be to use a puller such as this to pull the crankshaft pulley off. Unfortunately, in this case, the puller is actually too long, the screw is actually too long to fit down in here where we need it to without pulling the radiator out. So rather than pulling the radiator out, which you could do if you wanted to, I don't want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use two pry bars behind the crankshaft pulley, and you want to be very careful doing this because you don't want to break anything. So what we're going to do is I've got one wedged here behind the crankshaft pulley, you can see, and one wedged over here. And be careful what you're prying on, because there's plastic behind there and aluminum, things like that you don't want to break. Alright, so take the two pry bars and just kind of wiggle them back and forth. And you see the pulley start to kind of work its way off there. Alright, next we'll remove the timing belt tensioner. It's going to be the two 12mm bolts right here. Okay, next we're going to inspect the timing belt tensioner. We're going to find out, I'm already replacing this, but we'll find out if you're not replacing it, if this is still good, or if you don't know if you're going to replace it yet. So here's the plunger for the tensioner. Now this, you should not be able to push this in with your hand. So you can see I can push it in with my hand, so it's bad. So if it wasn't bad, what we would need to do is compress this in a vise. So you would put this end in one end of the vise and this in the other end of the vise, and you would compress it very, very slowly. It should take about 5 minutes. That's how long you should take, about 4 to 5 minutes to compress this plunger into the vise. If you go too fast, you could destroy an already good tensioner, so you don't want to go too fast. If you don't have a vise, or this is questionable, just replace it. It's a good idea to replace it anyway, like I said, but if you're not replacing it, check the plunger. You shouldn't be able to push it in like that. So this tensioner is bad. We're not going to worry about it. If you were reusing it, like I said, take 4 or 5 minutes, compress this in a vise, and once you get this hole, these two holes lined up right here, you'll stick the pin in it, or a paper clip, something like that that's going to hold it, something that'll fit in those holes right through there. That'll hold it in place until we install it back in the car. Okay, next step is to remove this fluid coupling, is what it's called. It's basically what the fan bolts to. We've got a few bolts here, one right here. We'll want to remove that. Remove this one down here. Remove this one here. Okay, once you got the bolts out, you may need to kind of pry the tensioner pulley here away from it to be able to slide this thing out. Alright, next step, we'll go ahead and remove the lower timing cover here. You got a bolt right here. Okay, next we'll remove this ring here. And then we can go ahead and remove the timing belt.